I think that socialism destroys everything. You can have one of the richest countries and the richest economy in the world. You can introduce socialism in, it just destroys everything. I think it's a corrosive social acid, an economic acid.
It's incredible that Venezuela literally can pull black gold out of the ground and end up bankrupt.
Exactly. Yeah, and we're going to talk about Venezuela and how Maduro can be said to be living the dream of some politicians in the West. So on the pardon me, sorry. Right, on the 28th of July, the Venezuelans voted for presidential elections. There were some contestants.
I'll do it with this.
The contestants were incumbent President Maduro and Edmundo González Urrutia, the leader of the opposition. And ever since, Venezuela is in turmoil. And we will briefly diagnose the situation and also the larger pitfalls of Venezuela, and also talk about some of the events that have happened. Now, Maduro appointed his own National Election Council, as expected.
Did they find that Maduro's party did nothing wrong and won?
Exactly, yeah. So Maduro announces victory, and he says that he won 51.2% and that Gonzalez won 44.2%. And this is essentially what the opposition is contesting. Now we have here the opposition saying that they won 73.2%. And that they can prove it because they have all the data from the tallies from all the places where people went to vote.
Well, I'm sure it was the freest and fairest election in history.
Yes, so here we have the very distinction between the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach. The opposition cites evidence in a bottom-up manner. They collect all the evidence from all the voting booths. And the National Election Council says, no, we won. Here we have obviously people who are not particularly convinced.
Yeah.
Not everyone is convinced by Maduro's announcement of triumph. And we have here some interesting facts about why people may be a bit suspicious about the results. There are many reasons. If you see here, they are saying that the numbers are way too round. It's just statistically impossible to have so many such round numbers. But also they say that Maduro has stopped publishing official data since 2015. There is close to 80% poverty. It's unlikely that people are going to be happy with it. Also that 7 million people have fled Venezuela ever since Maduro took power, which is I think around 12 years ago. And also people just saying, obviously, the corruption that is widespread in Venezuela is definitely not something that wins you widespread approval. Even if people say that, we won 99% of the vote and stuff like that we see every now and then. Now, we have some people, though, who are obvious, scumbags and bad faith actors who say, like Jackson Hinkle says, incorrect, those election results are fake. Maduro won fair and square, and I was on the ground observing voting stations. So he was apparently on every voting station there, and he saw how Venezuelans voted. But in that case, why did the Venezuela's National Electoral Council announced in the end of August that they wouldn't publish the electoral records?
Because it was just so free and fair. Why would they need to?
Yeah,
Stelis, you got to understand, what they're saying is, look, this would be a burden to the taxpayer in Venezuela.
Yes.
So it's so obviously free and fair. We want to cut down public spending. In fact, you're in the wrong for even asking.
Exactly. After this, as you would expect, Maduro launched a wave of political arrests.
As I would expect, yeah. Of course he did.
Yes.
Of course he did.
We have here.
I shouldn't laugh, but it's just like, yeah, of course he did.
We have Venezuelan Attorney General Tarek William Saab announcing that those who contest Maduro's election victory will be sentenced to prison.
And that's how you know it was legitimate.
Yeah, exactly. This doesn't exactly radiate trust. Right, we have here videos of people from Maduro who are arresting people who counted votes, and they are essentially humiliating them.
Yep.
They're dragging them down in the street.
Probably government employees.
Some of them naked. The humiliation is part of the process.
I'm getting a vision of November for some reason. I can't tell you why.
Just go back. Those people are unironically going to be public employees. Like they're probably employed actually by
certainly,
the
yeah.
government. That's
Yeah,
the thing. Like, because Venezuela has such a large state. Like we covered the protests a while ago, and like this was literally like they would bus in people from government employment to this area to go and protest. Like, oh my god.
But the opposition would also have people there into the voting booths, because otherwise they would constantly say, they would have that argument as well. We have here also people busting into the house of an opposition leader and kidnapping them.
Well, it's because they were like, well, if they can do it to Donald Trump, we can do it to anyone.
Kidnapping is basically very widespread in Venezuela, especially kidnapping. Now, if we fast forward, forward to today, they also issued an arrest warrant for the leader of the opposition, the main leader of opposition.
Again, they're just looking at American politics and going, well, we can do that.
Yes, and this is from today, and they issued an arrest warrant against Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia. So this goes on. But also, you could say that it's 35 days now that the protests are going on. No, more than that.
Right.
They're not stopping. Right, here we have people who, after the election results, they got very animated, and they are participating in mass mobilization against Maduro. And you can see here they have also the Venezuela Libre 1. They have this person with a horse riding, and then you have all sorts of people with the bikes. They go to Caracas to protest.
I think that looks awesome, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know?
Imagine that, a horse leading a group of people on bikes. Yeah.
Yes, we also have massive protests that are not stopping for. They're just ongoing. They just don't stop. They completely defy Maduro and his gangs and his.
They're saying buans.
Yes. Right. So we also have here some gangs, the Colectivos gang. They say that they're riding around on motorcycles, intimidating Venezuelans. There are reports of some shooting. There are also estimations of dead people.
Yeah, 12 killed. Yeah.
Yes.
Not as dangerous as the Mexican elections.
But also, I would say that the idea of having gangs roaming around intimidating people is unfortunately not something that happens only in the other side of the world. We are far beyond the point where people were saying these problems are happening in the other side of the world. It would never happen here. You could say that unfortunately in Europe and also in England and in the US, this is a bit more common nowadays. Here we also have people, again, with bikes mobilizing, and they descend to Caracas to...
So this is essentially some sort of populist uprising against Maduro because they feel that he stole the election.
Yes, it's a massive uprising.
Yeah.
Well, also, what do they have to lose? What is it? A week's wages for a dozen eggs or something like that? There are ridiculous levels of poverty now from a country that used to be the richest in South America. How's that going for them?
Reports say that poverty is more than 80%.
Gee.
And you would expect it because people live in slums.
Yeah.
Right. We have here also reports about Maduro forces firing against Venezuelan voters. And what is really interesting here, especially if we link this with the previous segment we did right before the elections, is that there's a district in Petare, which is the largest favela in South America, as they say. Around 500,000 people live there.
As I understand it, favela's a slum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's like the places where people in the Fast and Furious saga live. Yeah. And we also have the Maduro's thugs here try to enter, but the people there have a very strong communal bond there, which you could say that sometimes poverty does aid to this.
Sure.
Does aid to, and they really run them out. And what is interesting here is that in the previous segment we did about it, it was us three talking about it, I showed a documentary at the end where the reporters were asking people from Petare, what do you think about the regime? And they were saying, no, we support the Bolivarian revolution. And, we ended up saying, believe that if you will.
Yeah.
Turns out people are not that stupid, even if they're very poor there. They're not that stupid. They understand that they live in a brutal dictatorship and they're fed up with lying. And they know that if they spoke freely, they would be abused in several ways by the regime. And we also have here other places where there are Venezuelans who are just driving out Maduro's forces, and as you said, they have nothing to lose. Just here we have Venezuelans tearing down statues of Maduro, statues of Chavez, and you could say that here they are, in a sense, understanding that they do live in a sort of myth, because there is the myth of the Bolivarian revolution that Venezuelans are rejecting, and here we see them destroying the statue, tearing it down, and being very enthusiastic about it, laughing and just stepping on top of it, and
that's literally the statue of a socialist tyrant.
Exactly, engaging in a symbolic act of doing this. But not everyone was happy with this.
Well, I'm sure the socialist tyrants were furious.
They were furious. I don't know necessarily if Maduro would be furious, because I'm sure he would like to put his own statues there. But
helping him out, really.
No. Maduro is like very much the heir to Chavez, as I understand it. So he's got to be kind of like, Maduro is our guy.
Yeah, he would say so. But
Chavez is our guy.
But Roger Waters found it a particularly blasphemous act. Yeah, he's very upset, and he says that this is just thuggery, and people shouldn't protest again. The people should keep the Bolivarian revolution alive.
Did he say that about the Colston statue in Bristol? I don't know.
I heard him, so you have to hear him as well.
So British multimillionaire chimes in.
Elon Musk, he's posting anti-Maduro tweets about Venezuela and the election that Nicolas Maduro just won there. Elon Musk, this is, the same Elon, the oligarch Elon Musk. Okay, I wonder why he wants to get rid of the government that represents the ordinary people. This is the Elon Musk who sat in front row seats, probably given to him by his friend Netanyahu, the mass murderer.
All of that is completely relative to Venezuela, by the way.
Told his lies all afternoon to Congress.
He's not even the best guitarist in Pink Floyd, so I don't know why anyone takes him seriously.
Well, but the thing is, notice how this is just very online complaints.
Yeah,
I like Maduro and Chavez because they've got like a myth around themselves. So I ignore all of the tyranny. It's just like Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn is exactly the same with this. He used to phone in to Chavez's radio show and, speak to him in Spanish about how great he was. And this is that same sort of weird sort of British cult mentality, which I guess is just anti-aristocratic or something.
And also Venezuela is something that has an allure for socialists, and especially for celebrities, because you had politicians, for instance, Bernie Sanders, Jeremy Corbyn, basically all leftists and all progressives somehow think that there is something magical about Venezuela.
They started off so well, and they tanked the economy. I mean,
that was all America.
US sanctions.
Right, but what the thing is, in a way, Venezuela is a kind of perfect model of the kind of socialism they want. They actually managed to grasp hold of the entire country and keep the entire population down, and actually impose modern socialism on them. So like if Venezuela goes down in a fire of revolution, which looks like it's happening because socialism's evil, then that means that their entire philosophy and what they want for our country is evil and wrong.
That's exactly correct, and I think it's good to summarize exactly what happened in Venezuela and why Marxism and socialism are just ridiculous doctrines that can only lead to disaster. So Venezuela had and has, according to OPEC, the largest oil reserve. And they have around
80% poverty.
Estimations of 313 billion barrels of oil. So something like that. It's ridiculously large.
Yeah.
It's more than 40 billion barrels more than Saudi Arabia, according to the estimations. So what happened is that Venezuela had a lot of problems before even Chavez. They did have lots of problems, and I think in economics it's called Dutch disease, which is over-reliance on one good. So they had only that. They just focused entirely on oil. That led to corruption even before Chavez. We should be correct with the facts. But what happened is that Marxists came along, and they, instead of giving an orthodox economic interpretation of the problem of Venezuelan economy, they just gave a Marxist, ideologically rigid interpretation.
What a surprise.
And basically they just chimed in Chavez came along, and he was particularly lucky when he entered power in 1998. The price of Venezuelan oil barrel was around $8. At some point, it skyrocketed around $114. So what happened is that essentially this didn't change. Over-reliance on oil didn't change. He was incredibly lucky because when he was in power, the price of Venezuelan oil barrel was increasing. And there were reports by people from the US Embassy saying the person who is going to come after Chavez is going to be the most unlucky person in Venezuela. So Chavez dies in 2012, Maduro comes in, and the price of oil goes down. And essentially, we're looking to the Venezuela that has led to today. But essentially, the problem is, and sorry, Josh, that Maduro didn't change anything importantly to Chavez. It was just that Chavez was incredibly lucky with the price of global oil.
Yeah, and obviously they don't have influence over the oil price, so it was entirely out of their control, but they founded their economy and structured it in such a way as it was contingent on the high oil prices remaining the same, because they introduced lots and lots of welfare, and for a brief period of time the welfare state in Venezuela was one of the most expansive of any Latin American country, and they financed that with the oil money. But when the price of oil went down, they were left paying for this massive welfare state that they definitely couldn't afford.
Because Chavez, let us remind people, had privatized business. And that also made Venezuela much more reliant on imports.
Lots of farms and people producing food were nationalized.
Yes.
So
And so
did the same to the oil.
It massively reduced the productivity of food in Venezuela.
But it happened with the oil industry because they fill the industry itself with party apparatchiks who are not experts on drilling for oil. And so things get worse.
So the Venezuelans now are carrying on protesting. Here we have Maria Corina Machado, who is leading the opposition alongside Edmundo González Urrutia, and they are not stopping. And here I have another. It's another sign of what Marxists are doing, which is just ridiculous. And I think it's good to expose them. They claim to talk about the people, and they claim to talk for the people, but whenever they are talking about Venezuela and other countries, presumably not their own, because in their own countries their own people would hold them accountable, into what they're saying is that they constantly present everything in terms of Maduro versus US or Maduro versus another country. At no place do they allow a room there for a distinction between how the Venezuelans conceive of their interests and how Maduro conceives of his own interests. So this is exactly what Marxists are doing. They're essentially militarizing socialists. They're militarizing their society, and that's what they will do in due course in every country where their power increases.
And that's what they've done in every other country in Latin America.
In every other country, they are constantly focusing on an us or them mentality. They're saying, this is war, this is always war. There is no distinction between normal conditions and conditions of emergency. It is always an emergency, and everyone who disagrees with the state is an enemy of the state. That's the socialist recipe, and it is a recipe for disaster. And Josh has done contemplations on this.
I basically created a timeline of how Venezuela went from the richest country to utter ruin, and what policies they passed to lead it along the way. So if you want a detailed look, that's the place to look. Yeah,
that's Contemplations number 64. And now we need to say something else, because there is a renewed interest in Venezuelan elections now, because you could say that 6 years ago there was also interest with Guaido, and but it died down after a bit. But right now there is something that they did with Guyana. They started publishing maps showing significant parts of Guyana as belonging to Venezuela, and they did this in December 2023. That's why they're saying that maps are also a way of applying politics, because they also show the kind of region people want to exercise power in,
But also-
project might in.
Problems at home, says the Latin American dictator. What you need is a foreign war.
Yes, but the reason why they're doing it is because their oil isn't enough to fund their own.
Has Guyana got lots of oil, has it?
Guyana has an oil reserve that was now recently found, and recent estimates say that it is the 17th largest oil reserve in the world.
How's Venezuela not got enough bloody oil?
They don't have enough because with socialism, it's never enough.
Yeah.
And socialism just doesn't work. It destroys societies. That's why having a healthy degree of capitalism is really important. And speaking of that, we have T-shirts to sell. You can check our Islander merch. We have a deadline for this. Is it the end of this week?
I think so.
Yeah, by next week, we're not going to be selling any of the Islander merch anymore.
Yep.
Yes, so you can check out our shirts. They come out in various sizes: small, medium, large, XL, XXL, XXXL.
That's what I need.
Exactly. So
I ate a lot this weekend.
check them out.
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, and if you want to see what else we're up to, you can follow Connor's series where he talks to lots of prominent people in the Westminster political sphere. Here he's talking to Ben Habib. If you want to see what else we're putting out, you can follow us on Twitter where we post links to all of the work we're doing. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.